One of the biggest mistakes that I see Christian entrepreneurs make is building their business in a way that slowly consumes the very life they started the business for. Now, it doesn't usually happen overnight. In fact, at first, it often looks like dedication. You start your business because you want more freedom, more flexibility, more time with your family, and the ability to steward your gifts in a way that honors God. But somewhere along the way, the business quietly starts taking over. Time with God gets pushed to the margins or disappears almost entirely, apart from Sunday morning and maybe the occasional quick prayer between tasks. Your health takes a back seat, and you're mentally on all the time, even when you are technically off. And many people assume that this is just part of the process. They tell themselves it's only a season of hustle and that once the business finally takes off, things will settle down. But what I've seen both in my own experience and in many other entrepreneurs is that if a business is built in a way that demands constant sacrifice, the sacrifice rarely stops. So in this video, I want to talk about the business mistake that quietly leads many Christian women into burnout and how to build a business in a way that actually supports your faith, your family, and your life instead of competing with it. Now, to be clear, this doesn't usually happen because someone has bad priorities. In fact, it often happens to the most sincere and driven people. Christian women starting businesses tend to care deeply about what they're building. They want to serve people well. They want to steward their gifts responsibly. And they genuinely want to honor God through their work. But there are two situations where this mistake tends to show up most. The first is with people who simply love a challenge. They are naturally driven. They enjoy learning, building, solving problems, and seeing progress. So when they start a business, it becomes the next mountain to climb. And before they realize it, they're pouring more and more time and energy into it because they want to make it work. Now, the second situation is when someone feels real financial pressure. Maybe they need the income. Maybe they want to contribute to their family's finances. Or maybe they just simply want the peace of mind that knowing that they can provide if they ever needed to. Now, that sense of urgency can quietly push people into believing that they need to work constantly in order to succeed. And this is where the hustle culture slowly creeps in. Even in Christian business spaces, there can be an underlying message that success comes from pushing harder, working longer, and sacrificing more, at least for a season. And at first, that can sound reasonable, but the problem is that if a business is built around constant pressure and constant effort, it rarely becomes peaceful later. Instead, it just simply grows into something that's always demanding more. And one of the reasons this happens is surprisingly simple. Most business advice is built for people whose lives revolve around their business. But many Christian women are building businesses around life that already has real responsibilities, whether that's faith or family, a home to run, and sometimes children to care for. So when we try to copy business models designed for completely different lifestyles, the result is almost always pressure. Not because we're incapable, but because the model itself doesn't fit the life that we're trying to live. And life itself doesn't exactly help, because life rarely runs in a straight line. Children get ill, family needs change, unexpected bills appear. Technology decides to stop working at the worst possible moment. I have experienced that a number of times. In other words, curveballs happen. And if your business already requires constant pressure just to keep up, then those curveballs can make everything feel 10 times heavier. The cost of that approach usually shows up in a few very specific areas. One of the first is your faith. When the business feels urgent, time with God can slowly get pushed to the edges of the day, or even squeezed out completely apart from Sunday mornings and maybe a quick prayer here and there. Instead of being the foundation that everything flows from, faith becomes something that you're just kind of trying to fit in around everything else. And another area is family. You might still be physically present, but mentally, you're often somewhere else, thinking about the next task, the next idea, the next thing that needs to be done. And then there's your health. Constant pressure, long hours, and the feeling that you should always be doing more can lead to stress and eventually burnout. The difficult part is that many people assume this is simply a temporary season. They tell themselves that once the business grows a little more, or once they reach a certain milestone, things will finally calm down. But if the business is built in a way that constantly demands more time, more attention, and more energy, that pressure usually continues. Now, I know this personally because I went through a season where I was pushing extremely hard in my business, and at the time, I genuinely believed that it was going to be just a short-term sacrifice. I thought that if I worked hard enough for long enough, eventually everything would settle down and I would be able to enjoy the benefits later. But something else also crept in during that time. When you're trying to grow quickly, there is a constant temptation to try every marketing strategy and idea that appears. You see someone succeeding with one approach, then another person recommends something different, and then suddenly there are 100 different things that you could be doing. And before long, you are trying to keep up with all of them, which, as you can imagine, is quite exhausting. Now, what I eventually realized is that while many strategies can work, that doesn't mean that they're all right for me or you. Some approaches fit your personality and energy better than others. And if you are constantly forcing yourself to do things that drain you, the business quickly becomes something that you resent rather than you enjoy. Now, eventually, I reached a point where I recognized that something needed to change, not because building a business was the wrong goal, but because I was building it in a way that was not sustainable for me. So instead of asking, how can I grow this business faster? I started asking a different question. How can I build a business that actually supports the life that I want to live instead of competing with it? Now, that question changed the way I think about business, because the goal of building a business from home was never to replace the life that I wanted. It was supposed to support it, to allow me to steward my gifts, serve others, and provide financially while still protecting time for my faith, family, and the things that matter most. And that means building the business around your life, not trying to force your life to fit around the business. Now, that doesn't mean you never work hard. There will be short seasons where you may need to push a little more. For example, when you're finishing a course or preparing a launch or creating your first offer so that you finally have something to sell. But those seasons should be intentional and temporary. They shouldn't become the permanent pace of your life, because if constant pressure becomes normal, it usually means the business has been designed in a way that requires it. And one of the most helpful things that you can do as a Christian entrepreneur is think carefully about how your business is structured. From the beginning, it helps to prioritize simplicity. Simple offers, simple systems, and ideally, fewer tabs open in your brain at the same time. And wherever possible, automation that removes unnecessary pressure from your daily workload. The earlier you build those things into your business, the easier it becomes to protect your energy and time long term. Because a business that relies entirely on constant effort will always demand more from you. But a business that's designed thoughtfully can begin to support your life rather than competing with it. So if you are feeling stretched or overwhelmed right now, one helpful place to start is with a simple audit. Take a step back and look honestly at how you are currently spending your time. Ask yourself, what actually needs to be done right now? And what have I been telling myself is urgent that could realistically wait? Now, sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to do everything immediately, when in reality only a few things truly matter in this season. And giving yourself permission to focus on just those few priorities can bring a surprising amount of peace. Now, if you're wondering what this can actually look like in practice, I shared more about how I structure my business around limited working hours in another video. The title mentions stay-at-home mums building a business around 10 hours a week, but the principles in the video apply even if you don't have children or your life looks very different. It's simply about designing a business that fits realistically into your life rather than constantly pushing beyond it. Now, if you want to think about this more deeply before building or growing your business, I have created a free training. It's called From Idea Holder to Impact Maker, 5 shifts that Christian women must make before building a profitable, peaceful business from home. Now, in that training, I walk through several shifts that can help you approach business in a way that is more peaceful and sustainable from the beginning. You can access that free training through the link below this video. And at the end of the day, the purpose of building a business from home isn't to sacrifice the life that God has entrusted to you. It's to use your gifts in a way that blesses others while still protecting the things that matter most.